5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I farted.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
I can move you. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to episode 91 of Rank and Review. You have found your way to time trouble. Me and my friend Colin Semenoff are going to discuss 6 films that deal in time travel. And as usual with the podcast Rank and Review, you are going to be subjected to some coarse language, and you're going to be subjected to some spoilers. Please send any feedback you might have for the show to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. And find the show on iTunes, find it on Facebook, and leave me a message. Say hello, leave a review. Anything you can do to help support the show. Tell that other movie lover in your life about Rank and Review. This is, as always, your host and random Canadian, Larry Parsons, saying thank you so much for listening to Rank and Review. Hello and welcome to the 91st episode of Rank and Review. And my guest this episode is Colin Semenoff. And I don't know you very well.
No, but we have similar friends, and so I think we've heard a lot about each other over the years. But it's now we get to actually get to meet face to face. So.
And you're roommates with Karen Giese.
Yeah, we own a house together. So
the one-time Rank and Review champion.
Yeah, there's and she has let me know that she has won in the past. So I'm not gonna make any promises, but I'm gonna do my best to come away with something. It's gonna be either all or nothing. So.
All or nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can win big, you can lose big. There are prizes at stake, but nice. I like to think that you win just by participating.
Or maybe I've already lost and I came back in time, and
right.
now this is my take 2, but you just don't know it, and there's another version of me hiding somewhere.
Exactly.
You know?
This is my little primer box.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're talking about today. This episode's called Time Troubles. It's the first time I'm dealing exclusively with time travel.
Yes.
It's not the only time that we've had these Groundhog's Day source code type of storytelling, but you chose this list out of a list of many, many lists. There's almost 300 projected episodes to see for Rank and Review.
That's awesome.
And out of all those ones, you selected time travel. I'm just curious why.
I've always been a huge time travel fan. I've always been drawn to the idea of being able to potentially change something, or what if you could go back and adjust something, and I don't know what that says about my own life if I wanted to change things, but I just, it's been fascinating. So whether it's been books or weird 80s TV shows where something happens and there's a double or something like that, it's just been an interesting concept because, and even in science, my family has always had documentaries on the go all the time, and right. So Michio Kaku and Discovery and all the different science cable channels out there, they've got tons of that stuff out there too, and it's just, I don't know, it's just been something I've been drawn to. So when you said, hey, you want to do a theme there, it's yeah, let's do time travel, because I mean, some of the movies we've got are they're time travel themed, but there's different genres at play too, so you can kind of get a flavor of different genres with the time travel threads.
Well, that's some of the questions that I have. In some cases, are these multiple dimensions, or are these opening up, that's the whole can of worms thing. I recently did a 2-part episode on Star Trek, and we discussed time travel, and how if I was a showrunner for Star Trek, my first rule would be no fucking time travel.
That's what the showrunners used to say, actually, is that you weren't, if you wanted to pitch, this is like way back when Deep Space Nine and all those things were on, if you wanted to pitch, it was a rule. You're not allowed to pitch time travel. But what were all the favorite episodes?
Time travel. Well, to me, it always opens up problems. Like, you always end up, like when... Spoilers for Back to the Future, and if you haven't seen Back to the Future, shame on you.
Yes.
But when Marty McFly comes back home, and everything has changed, and his entire life is different, he's gonna have a real period of adjustment. Like, there's a lot of shit that happened, a lot of vacations that he took with his family he has no memory of. Like there's always something. There's always some question mark, some loop that doesn't quite close.
Well, and I think the thing with time travel, just the concept of it as far as a storytelling device, is that you are going to irk people either way, because either you're going to take it very seriously and you're going to satisfy all the nitpicky detailers out there, or you're going to just throw caution in the wind and say time travel is cool and we don't really care about causality, or you know, if I could go, the paradox of killing my grandfather and destroying my whatever. They don't get into that. So and then the diehard detail freaks are going to get upset. So either way, you're either you're gonna irk the detailers, or you're gonna irk the people who just want a great story. But a really good time travel story, in my mind, it will have a blending of the two. And there's a few things that you can say, okay, that probably, the logic there might be a bit fuzzy, or maybe it's too above my brain level to comprehend, but you can forgive that. You know, there are some issues with some of these movies that I will not be able to forgive, and we can get into those. But I mean, all in all, it's a neat way to kind of make people think.
Yeah, and what I like about the genre is what I like about most of the genre stuff that we talk about on the podcast is that it's incredibly flexible. We can include movies like Primer or Primer in this selection. We can also include Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, right?
Yeah.
We can include Time Bandits and Time Cop.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not here to talk about Time Cop today. I hope I didn't get anybody's hopes up. But well, here's the 6 movies that we are going to meet and discuss today. Looper from Rian Johnson, who's about to bring us the next entry in Star Wars.
Oh, I did not
He's
know
doing
that.
the next episode. I don't remember what it's called.
The one that's just in the can right now.
The one that's on its way next Christmas, yeah.
The one that the late Carrie Fisher just finished up.
Her last motion picture. So there's that. Then we have The Butterfly Effect, starring Ashton Kutcher. We have Time Crimes, an interesting little ditty. A high school set, probably the most peripherally in its time travel sort of plot line, Detention. Is it Primer or Primer? Because I've heard people say both, and now it's bugging me.
I don't know how many times I've said it out loud, but I've always just called it Primer in my mind.
Right.
But I don't know.
Yeah, but I've heard people refer to a scientific primer before. So Primer.
See, I'd have to
let's say
defer.
Primer. Let's go. We got Primer and Looper. It's easier on the mouth.
Yeah, it works for me.
And we're gonna close with, and I never disclose this to you because again we don't know each other super well.
Not yet, but we will.
Not yet.
I think there's gonna be a lot of hugging and crying it out. We'll be good.
Terry Gilliam is one of my very favorite filmmakers. We haven't talked a lot about him in the podcast.
Oh.
We are going to talk about one of his early films, Time Bandits.
All right.
Those are the 6 time travel movies that we're going to talk about, Colin. Is there anything that you would like to say by way of introduction before we jump into this?
I hope that I don't embarrass myself to your listeners. Bear with me. I'm not the most time travel scientific person out there. I like what I like. But at the end of the day, whatever you take away from these movies, have a great time with time travel in general. You know, watch them, read the books, have fun with it. It's just a really fun genre.
Agreed. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
I am one of many specialized assassins called loopers. We eliminate people from the future. Time travel has not yet been invented, but 30 years from now, it will have been. So when criminal organizations in the future need someone gone, they zap them back to me, and I do the necessaries. The only rule is never let your target escape, even if your target is you.
Okay, so let's start with Looper.
Looper.
I often am guilty of talking about baggage that I bring to movies, and sometimes the baggage helps me, and sometimes it hinders
We're talking
me.
like former relationships,
Exactly.
lost pets. Or...
my ex-boyfriend made this. No, but for instance, we reviewed Live, Die, Repeat. This Tom Cruise science fiction space battle thing, and I was like impressed by it because I wasn't that excited to watch a Tom Cruise science fiction.
As you should be. Like, that like, should not be like, I'm not a huge Tom Cruise fan either.
Typically, I don't get worked up about it, and it overperforms. I've gotten to the point in my life where I just don't get excited about Bruce Willis. Like, Bruce Willis has been a star for so long. He's been diehard for so long. He's done that tough, gruff Bruce Willis thing.
Well, and that's the thing, is like, Bruce Willis is always Bruce Willis. Yeah. He is a Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson type, Will Smith, where they're not really acting. They're just saying dialogue in their same character way, you know? So, it's never really different with them.
Bruce Willis does not excite me as a performer. I don't think he's bad necessarily. He just doesn't like, ooh, Bruce Willis, right? Yeah. So every now and then, just by the sheer number of movies he does, he'll hook himself up with an auteur, and all of a sudden The Sixth Sense happens, right? Yep. Or in this case, with Rian Johnson, he hooks himself up with Looper, where he's not the main focus of the film. He is and isn't the main character, because the main character is split between two performances. He and Joseph Gordon-Levitt play the same character, this Looper. This is sort of a roundabout way of saying it. I backed into Looper. I didn't sort of jump right on the train and say, I'm going to watch Looper, let's get excited about it. No. And I might be one of these guys who came to it late, and I just liked it more because, I didn't have the expectation of it.
How late did you come into it? Because it's 2012, so you just watch it like
I got it recently enough. Like I think I paid like $6 for it at Walmart, so it had been out for a couple of years.
Yeah,
right?
Okay, fair enough.
And I was curious enough. I like Rian Johnson as a director. Brick is an interesting movie. It's a high school set whodunit, and he did this movie called The Brothers Bloom, which is really good if you like sort of con artist movies. He's an interesting guy, but this seemed pretty different. This seemed science fiction. This seemed time travel. So here we go. I will let you speak, but I'll just try. I'm going to take a whack at this plot.
Sure.
We are introduced to Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and he tells us about his lifestyle of a looper. He is rich. He's affording these high-profile drugs that he drips into his eyes that makes him party all night long, and he finances this by being a hitman. He's given a time and place. It's a field in the middle of nowhere where there's a tarp laid out. A person appears in front of him, tied up. He shoots the person dead.
Tied up and bag over
their head, right? Shoots them, takes the gold or whatever, the payment that's on the body, disposes of the body, parties on. This is what's referred to as a looper. And the reason is that eventually, in order to cover their tracks, your future self gets sent back and executed by you.
Which kind of seems like a bit of a loop, like a loophole in the plot, that you'd be in charge of killing yourself. Why wouldn't they just kind of like shift one over and be like, okay, I'll kill you, you kill me, and then
Does it matter who kills the looper? Does it have to be him who kills himself?
Well, exactly, right? Because the whole plot would fall apart.
I don't know. It's the way that the powers that be decide to do things. And all of the business about the time travel and the rules of it are necessarily vague for all of the reasons we discussed in the introduction.
I think, at one point, Bruce Willis is in the diner with his younger self, and he's like, listen, we could do a whole bunch of maps, and figure everything's out, but we'd be here forever. So in a nutshell, he's got this line of dialogue that says, we don't care about the science of the time travel. We just got to deal with stuff.
We have a mutual problem that we need to solve.
Yeah.
So yes, his loop comes up, but it's Bruce Willis. His future self is Bruce Willis, and he escapes. And that means that the powers that be are after him, and he is after his older self. But his older self is a much more experienced, intelligent version of him. So and
at the same time, there's also this weird telekinesis thing happening in the.
This
is a little bit in our future. Like it's not right now. It's a little bit in the future, whatever year it is.
Yeah.
And people can like whatever they have a nickname for it. It's like a TK or something like that, and you can make float a coin or something.
People
like that.
are starting to have psychic abilities, so it's a world. Like this is not a movie that you can easily bubble down into a TV guide, explanation.
It was a pretty well realized world, though. Like I felt like there weren't too many things that made me scratch my head too much. I mean, the TK in the beginning was kind of introduced, but then I have to be honest, I didn't even remember it was a thing until like about a third or half of the movie had gone through, and I was like, oh right, okay, yeah, this is a thing, So they kind of introduced, and then just you forget all about it. But it didn't. Nothing felt too hokey,
right.
You
other than taken out of it necessarily.
No, other than the total, a head scratcher of why you would be responsible for killing yourself. I mean, if we're just lining up people to kill them and sending them back in time for these loopers to kill, you have Bob do it. Have somebody else do it where there can be no, cluing yourself in.
Some future gangster got off on the existential horror of it, I guess. I don't know. We're not privy to that scene. But what I will say is within the first 15 minutes or so, we're introduced to the world and we know enough of it to sort of feel like we get the rules.
Yep.
And I think that's the pass or fail on Looper. You either go with this ride or you go against it. So I'm curious to hear where you landed.
Well, okay, so full disclosure, I'd seen this movie before, before re-watching it to be with you here today. But I went with it. There were some, I've got some notes here about things that kind of, where if I really wanted to nitpick, if I really wanted to rip it to shreds.
That's what we're here to do.
But at the same time, I think a person can take a back seat and say, was it a good enough story? So, there were some things that I was like, okay, setting yourself back in time. There's no... and this is where the science people who really know time travel and all these theories might get me, but it's like causality or something like that. So there's a spoiler, but one of the guys starts, he's not Bruce Willis, he's an assassin, he's about to kill a person who's been blinked into the tarp, and he's got to shoot him, and the guy starts singing a song. Well, then he knows by the song that it's his future self that he's got to kill, right?
And he can't do it.
And then, but this long big thing happens, and he gets his younger self gets kidnapped. The future self is still running around, and then all of a sudden these scars start appearing on him, and his fingers start disappearing, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, they've got younger me." Well, dude, if your fingers are just disappearing right now, what happened to all the other 30 years of your life that had, since that finger was cut off? That implies that you were kept alive for that period of time and you became that person. How don't you have those memories? How did none of those butterfly effecty ripples in chain reactions prevent you from having the experience that you're having right now? So that made me kind of go we're dealing with some either weird, just make it up science that there's no cause and effect, or we're dealing with parallel universe or whatever. But I was just enjoying it, so I didn't really question it too much. It's still kind of a neat plot device.
That scene that you're talking about, and another scene involving an actor who I like called Garrett Dillahunt, are the
Which
two
one's
scenes.
Garrett Dillahunt?
He comes to the farmhouse to question the woman who's protecting her son.
Oh, is he the one from that comedy with Raising Hope or whatever? He was like a country bumpkin guy. Check it out. It's like
I haven't seen the show.
Yeah.
But he is a Jerry Award-winning actor for his work in the remake for The Last House on the Left. Oh. He plays a villain in that movie very chillingly, and he shows up in movies like No Country for Old Men and The Road. He's got small roles in both of those. Anyway, he shows up in one scene. This is getting deeper into the plot. Emily Blunt lives on a farm and she's protecting this son who we find out through the plot is very psychic.
Yeah, and huge telekinesis powers.
When he is threatened, as what happens with the Dillahunt character, this man is lifted off the ground and he explodes so severely that basically the entire inside of the house is coated with gore.
Yeah, it's the same guy I'm thinking of, yeah.
And then the story that you were talking about, the guy who got away, but his past self is kept hostage and literally his limbs are cut off and his fingers are just disappearing in front of his eyes, so it seems. Those two scenes are horror movie scenes.
Yep.
Those 100%. Are like surprisingly dark for this type of genre, and I really like that because I like the horror genre, and I've posited in the past on this podcast that most movies are secretly in some way kind of a horror movie, and I think this is definitely true of Looper. It's one of these movies that we have...
well, the ending. I mean, I know you say spoilers are allowed, but I don't want to say... Well, maybe I will. But that ending is horrifying, how they end. So I could totally see where you're going with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When I sit down to watch a movie like Looper, there's a certain expectation that I have. And it filled all the needs of your time travel adventure stories. I think that the loops work within the universe. But on top of that, we had this layer of horror of genuine fucking yikes horror. And that makes the stakes real. That makes us worry for Emily Blunt's character. It makes us worry for the kid. Makes me worry of what the evil in the movie is capable of.
Well, and there's a bit of redeeming qualities there too. Like they kind of at the end he finds his humanity, or I guess he prevents himself from having lost it in the first place. So you kind of see that there's a really true person there who even though he was an assassin, even though he was, and they didn't really get into that too much. Like, you don't really see any kind of Tarantino, blood, guts, and gore from his days as an assassin, which they could have easily done.
The violence is within the service of the story for the most part.
Yeah, and so, but even though he was an assassin and did all these horrible things, you still empathized with him, and at the end he does a pretty noble, decent thing. The younger Bruce Willis, I always want to call him Jennifer Love Hewitt, but
Joseph
Gordon-Levitt,
yeah,
who, by the way, does a pretty mean Bruce Willis impersonation with the makeup and the...
I was skeptical of it, to be honest, because
Really?
I don't think, well, no, going into it I was skeptical of it because they don't look anything alike, and they basically accomplish it in a montage. They show us a series of shots of Joseph Gordon-Levitt getting older and looking more like Bruce Willis until all of a sudden he looks like Bruce Willis. I went with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could tell that there's a bit of prosthetics happening, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt, what's his face? Levitt has the luxury of being able to watch all of those Bruce Willis movies where Bruce Willis is being Bruce Willis.
Those mannerisms are just
they're
there.
all there. Like, you've got a PhD class in how to, master's class in how to be Bruce Willis. So of course you can watch those and get those mannerisms. And when Hollywood does up your makeup, you can kind of do a good job. And he didn't disappoint me. It was kind of like that thing where Nicole Kidman won that award for being Sylvia Plath, one of those poets where she had the nose piece or whatever, and it was just enough to kind of make you think, I'm not looking at Nicole Kidman. It's not her being her. She's someone else, and that was what it was with him being Bruce Willis. It was a little bit prosthetic-y, but it's still. I suspended my disbelief.
There's performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The movie is guilty, I guess, in a way of something that I complain about too. It's more popular in TV, but it's in movies too, where there's a sort of a who do we cheer for vibe to the movie. Like, in the end,
Like, how so?
I mean, we like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He's our protagonist, but he's a contract killer drug addict.
Yeah.
Right?
But again, they didn't really paint that too darkly, right? It wasn't like Rainbows in Disney when he was killing people and putting those drug drops in his eyes. But you still got a sense that he was lost. And poor Joseph, he's just he's a lost man and just trying to have a life. He had a woman that he loved and that did all these things, and the actual nuts and bolts of him killing people for money. It was a plot device, I think, and it really wasn't in our faces too much in the movie.
He seemed a person in denial about himself, right? He's okay with these murders because they're people from the future and it doesn't really count. He can justify it to himself. But every night he's pouring drugs into his eyes. Yeah. Literally, I thought it was interesting that he was pouring it into his eyes. It was an interesting specific choice, right? There's this prostitute, Pepper Parabo, who he loves, but you kind of get the idea that it's all part of the party. Like,
and the one scene that I really liked was, I can't remember, it's halfway earlier on in the movie, first third or so, and he's having this kind of heart-to-heart with her, and my take on it, she's staring at the clock, which is kind of neat because it's a time travel movie. She's staring at the clock, it's about time, but that she's on the clock because she's a prostitute, and there's really no connection there.
And all of these stoned hitmen are all in love with her. They're just, this is his hour.
See, and I wonder too, how much of the us not hating him for being a killer and being a drug addict is because of his performance. Like, I think a significant amount of it is because I almost forgot up until now that he also turned in his friend that was in the basement for money, right? So pretty dastardly, crappy things to do. But he's that Joseph Lovett guy, and you just like him because he's just so gosh darn likable, I guess.
But I fall back on my horror analogy because that's who I am as a person, right? A lot of times you'll have horror movies that have tragic endings, and it's sort of pointless. A bunch of kids go to the wrong place at the wrong time, and they get killed. Yeah. But sometimes it's a tragic ending.
You need the empathy to give a crap.
Sometimes a tragic ending. Spoilers from a movie from 1963, The Haunting, for instance, where the protagonist is led to this cruel fate because of a fatal flaw within them, right? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because our character is led to, I guess, arguably a cruel fate because of a fatal flaw within him. But in spite of that, his final act is the most noble act of his life. Yeah,
and his portrayal is very human, and that's why you give a crap about him. Like, sidebar to the Alien franchise, I love James Cameron Alien. I love the Ridley Scott because they were people who were in a situation and I empathized and I gave a shit.
Yeah.
But pretty much every single other one, just random people show up and start getting devoured. I don't care how much blood or guts happens. I don't care. Yeah. But with this here, young Bruce Willis was, okay, I give a crap about him. He seems very human. I can kind of relate to, not because I've ever been a hitman, but because he's making it relatable through what he's doing, Yeah.
And he is trying in his way to do the right thing.
Well, yeah, he's basically battling himself. He literally battling his older self, who is, and that's kind of this interesting thing to think about because older Bruce Willis he's been in love with this beautiful woman that he met while he was in China or Thailand or wherever the heck he was, and so he's fighting for something that's very real to him. And
he was granted an undeserved redemption just by meeting the right woman, right?
Yeah.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, the young guy, acquires his redemption by making a choice.
Yeah.
I also want to go back because I started sort of shit-talking Bruce Willis.
Okay.
They use Bruce Willis as the badass in this one. He has a very clear trajectory. He wants to get back to the way it was and hopefully, spare his wife from this terrible fate. And
because she's murdered.
Because she is murdered when they capture him. And he is full-on vengeful Bruce Willis. And you know what? Bruce Willis has proved many times before he can do this.
Yeah.
And when he goes as a one-man killing machine and takes out all these professional hitmen, a lot of times it would be a really cheesy sequence. But for some reason, because he got Bruce Willis, we believe it.
Yeah.
There's lots of great little details, too. I like that one of the major henchmen constantly kept on fucking it up. And we kept on going back to that character where you're going to see this is the scene where he actually achieves.
And for a second, I thought that if we're talking about the same guy, that he was going to be the
major bad sort of obstacle.
The boss dude,
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, well, I'm so smart, I've already figured this out. That's not how it played out. But I thought, okay, maybe he's protecting his younger self and letting this guy screw up all the time,
You got Jeff Daniels showing up in a small role as the one guy sent back from the future to run the loopers. So he kind of talks above everybody else and seems put out because he knows what he's being denied by living in the past.
Yeah. He's like, I'm from the future, guys.
It's just a movie full of great details. And if it doesn't 100% hold together, it holds together enough that I will 100% endorse Looper. I guess that's where I wash up on it.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I agree. I would totally endorse this movie. I think it's a fun time, and it's not... Because I have a big issue with huge Hollywood movies where everything's just exploding all over the place, and I don't really give a crap. Because if I don't give a crap, I don't give a crap, and I'll just I don't want to watch.
Well, there's brains behind these explosions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is, and so there's some special effects happening, and there's some adrenaline happening, and there's some really neat fight scenes. But at the end of the day, I cared, and I watched the whole thing, and I think for a fun ride with a bit of a time travel flavor to it, yeah, give her a go.
Remember when we were kids and I used to have those blackouts? Well, some of those memories have been coming back to me.
There are moments in life we choose to remember.
Do you think that we'll be together forever?
And some memories we can never forget.
All I know is if I read in these journals, I might be able to get Kaylee back.
I'd think twice about what you're doing. You could wake up a lot worse off than you are now.
I haven't seen results like this before.
But what if you could go back in time?
You are completely relaxed. Think of it like a movie. You can pause, rewind, or slow down.
Could you save the one person that mattered the most?
Oh, Ashton Kutcher.
Oh,
You're
Ash.
so dreamy.
And that's pretty much all he's got going for him, though.
Yeah. This is Butterfly Effect was sort of released in the height of the Ashton Kutcher-ness, I guess. I was never 100% on board with Ashton Kutcher. I didn't watch the 70s show regularly, but I understood that he played the dumb guy, and I've played the dumb guy enough on stage to know it's not hard.
Well, and I think the thing with him that always gets me, and it's apparent, is that he was a model or something like that got into Hollywood. So he's always just been, this kind of, word spouting, moving person on film. You don't really get a sense that he's emoting he's not acting. He's just being some guy who's talking on film.
I saw his Steve Jobs movie on an airplane.
Oh, yeah?
And I watched it because I was on an airplane. I remember almost nothing. I remember almost nothing about it.
With some casting directors like, yeah, you look like him. Let's give you money to be him.
Look, I'm not even going to be mean about it. I don't think that he sucks or anything like that, but I'm saying that he's in this movie because he was a hot property at the time.
I 100% agree with you. You know, there's no. I think someone else could have done it better. I don't think the movie really suffered a whole bunch because of him, but he didn't really do anything. He's kind of just like bleh. Amy Smart, though, I thought was really good.
Yeah, and I think it was relying on the popularity of Kushner to sort of put asses in seats, and then to, you know, selling to the Teen Beat crowd this tough premise. Our main character finds out that he has this ability or curse that he can reset the clock on his life. It costs him, it hurts his brain, it causes him nosebleeds. There's a physical payback. But if he needs to reset the clock, he can basically rewind to any point and start again.
By reading the book that he started, a journal that he started taking notes in, yeah.
So he's suffered from blank spots of memory in his youth that all get accounted for, and anytime something goes south, he can try to go back in time and fix it. But as is the case in these sort of ripple effect Twilight Zone things, anytime you try to fix something, it either gets worse or it causes another problem. It's
called. So I just the one thing that got me is like, okay, the butterfly effect, right? So this movie has nothing to do with butterfly effects, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff about who first coined butterfly effect, and Ray Bradbury wrote this, wicked short stories. The Sound of Thunder, 1952. So say my notes, and it was about how, you know, this one guy, he can time travel, but you're not supposed to touch anything. He squashes a butterfly, and the whole world has changed now because this one butterfly, millions of years ago, changed the whole ripple effect of everything. And the actual coining of the term butterfly effect was how the flapping of a butterfly could, end up in a monsoon or a typhoon on the other side of the world because of the, these ripple chain effects.
Neither of which play in any way.
No, especially as far as the butterfly effect, there was no subtle flapping of wings. There's like mayhem and murder and dogs being set on fire, like monumentally catastrophic events.
Mailboxes exploding, people being bludgeoned to death.
There's no subtlety, no butterflies.
Pedophiles, we got pretty much every depravity.
Yeah, it was like pretty much over the top, like not over the top in a horrible way, but like not subtle, not subtle in the slightest. No little flapping of wings changing the world, like monumental mayhem changing his life.
And I think that's my beef with the butterfly effect, almost wall to wall, is that it's not subtle. I think it's a movie that's a little bit impressed with itself. Like we got a really cool premise and we got a hot star, so this is going to be guaranteed. Right?
I see the pitch for this movie going, we've got a great vehicle for Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah.
We've got a hot writer and let's just put him out and make some money.
But I think in sort of the idea of, okay, we're going to have a timeline where he's an amputee, and we're going to have a timeline where he goes to prison. We're going to have, like, can
we talk about the timeline where he's dressed like an absolute chotch in, like, fluorescent, like, jogging clothes that were even just bad and eye-rolling in 2004 when this was made?
I think it was supposed to be funny, though, was it? Like, that was deliberate, right?
I really don't know. I didn't think so. I was kind of like, seriously, I don't know. It was pretty bad.
My point is, like, I think that, like, they shaped the idea of, like, the story so that the story made sense in their heads, but each individual beat, they kind of just did one coat of paint on. Mm-hmm. So, like, Amy Smart has a troubled childhood because, A, she chose to stay with her abusive father, and she's molested by a neighbor, right? Like, intro to psychoanalysis, what's going to fuck up a little girl, right? Yeah. Bad dad, sexually abused, right? And, like, I don't mean to belittle it, but it's just they went with the two most obvious things and hit them as hard as they possibly could. It was kind of interesting to see Eric Stoltz, who's usually playing a charming character, play...
Who was also in Back to the Future, so another time travel connection there. He was fired from Back to the Future. He wasn't in it. He was in it, and then they replaced it with Michael J. Fox.
He was almost Marty because he was drunk off of his Oscar nomination and apparently kind of treating people like shit.
Is that what it was for Elephant Man? Or no,
he got nominated for The Mask.
The Mask, that's what it was, because he had the elephantitis. Yeah,
but anyway... Eric Stoltz is his own movie, his own story. I like him as an actor, and I kind of miss him. He's sort of moved on to being directing. This is like one of the fewer high-profile things I remember seeing him in. He's sort of kind of quietly gone behind the scenes. But, yeah, I like, isolated beats of the movie. I think you're absolutely right when you say that Amy Smart gives a good performance. We see the range between sunshine happiness to this sort of, like, completely blitzed out drug victim prostitute. And she plays both sides of the coin very convincingly.
Well, I think she was probably the only one who was really cast well. The mom was a little bit too hokey for me. There's something about her voice that just
she's got a child's voice.
Yeah, she's like, "Hey, Ashton, you should be doing what?" I was like, "Okay, you're not a mom, you're whatever." And then the little kid, who I'm sorry if they're listening to this as adults and getting mad at me, or their fans are listening right now, but I don't see how this little kid could have any fans. He was pretty bad. He was this short little 2'0" blonde kid, and he beats somebody like 3 times his size at the movie theater when Ashton Kutcher is kissing his sister.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, there's no way that this little runty kid is even believable." Like, everybody was just cast pretty bad. Yeah. But this one, I was kind of, I stayed on the fence for when I originally saw it. I was on because it was a time travel movie, it was kind of fun. I had not re-seen it since 2004 until watching it for this podcast.
You're welcome.
But I mean, it makes you think. Hey, what do you like about different things? It just Ashton Kutcher running around in a housecoat in the first opening scene, writing into his journal saying, "If you're reading this, I'm already dead." It should be a hook, but I was kind of like, like I wasn't. Nothing really propelled me through it a whole bunch, But it was interesting enough.
Yeah. Again, it's not a bad movie. It's just like, I think that it thinks that it's a better movie than it is, or it's one of those. Again, I keep repeating myself, but there's bad movies that are just lame. It's poorly executed. It's poorly acted. It's just like it's a chore to watch. And then there's the really frustrating movies where they're haunted by the much better movie that they could be.
Yeah.
You can sort of see the afterglow images of the movie that could be there.
Or you see flavors of what the script might have been before some Hollywood executive started, fucking it up.
It's just a little bit dumber than it needs to be, and a little bit, a little bit flashier, I think, in a lot of ways.
I made a note here when I was watching this saying that this was it was a dystopian, melancholy version of Back to the Future. So you're fixing things without the adventure and the comedy, and it was pretty bleak, because there are different types of time travel movies. There are some where time travel is just a MacGuffin. You're just it's just there, but we don't really care about it. You're not really using it as anything that you can go and fix things. In this one, he's trying to fix things, and those. Just time travel stories in general, where someone is trying to fix or repair or remedy a situation, those are some of my favorite time travel movies of all time, and this one attempted that. And the bleak thing part of it wasn't so bad. I think that was the tone of it. I mean, at the end of the movie, we find out that everybody was better off if Ashton Kutcher was dead.
It's the opposite of It's a Wonderful Life.
It was a non-existent life. He kills himself in the womb, spoiler. Yeah. And he and his girlfriend had a better life because she was able to live with her family and not be
everybody but his mom, basically.
Everybody was happy that Ashton Kutcher died.
Yeah.
So
that's good. I was going to ask which version you watched, because it is in the director's cut that he goes back all the way back to the womb and somehow manages to kill himself.
I think those are the only two. Like, I've only seen it twice, and I've seen the same version each time.
The other version, that's the version I watched too, but I have the DVD, which will give you the option. The other version
So if I want to watch it a third time, I can see a new one.
If you want to see it again, because it relies on the kids, the crux to him was when he told Amy Smart that he liked her, which made her decide that she was going to stay with her dad instead of go live with her mom.
Okay.
And that put her on the path to be living with drunk dad and the abusive neighbor and. So by basically scaring her away, she chose to go a different life.
Oh, so Ashton Kutcher lives.
So Ashton Kutcher lives, but he's lonely. And
so even the director wanted to kill Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah, but they went the director's cut. Go for the dark ending, and I say if you can kill Ashton Kutcher,
why wouldn't you?
Do it.
He played Steve Jobs. I didn't hear that worked out too
exactly. I should feel something. Like, there's all these scenes.
He doesn't emote. He just doesn't emote. He's just a walking guy saying words, unfortunately.
The idea of a person who's able to go back into the womb and knowing them kill themselves is weirdly creepy and profound. And the mirror image of that happens earlier in the film, where he meets his father, and his father lunges across a table and tries to kill him. Mm-hmm. Because his father knows that his son suffers the same curse.
Yeah.
Right? And again, this should be like really compelling.
Well, I mean, there are points of the movie where when it's the two actors that aren't Ashton Kutcher, the younger version of Kutcher, and the father, Callum Keith Rennie, that's kind of a neat little thing there. You're like, okay, whoa, what's happening? Because it's a quick little cut, and all of a sudden he's being strangled, and you think, oh wow, this is actually kind of engaging. Don't get me wrong, the movie isn't atrocious. It's not bad. It's if I would have seen, I've never seen it in the theater, but if I had, I don't think I'd be demanding my money back. It's a good way to kill a couple hours if you're checking your email and you got it on the TV and your computer's open. Nothing wrong with it, but it's not stellar.
You can't get excited about it. You just can't. I mean, for me, it's going to rank pretty low on this list. But to be fair, it's got some pretty stiff competition. So.
Yeah, that's true. And this one is kind of reminiscent of Looper a little bit with the ending and the suicide. So they're trying to be these noble things, and apparently the only way to fix time travel is to kill yourself.
Time travel is like the scientific werewolf bite. The only way out is death.
Yeah, and it just gets worse as they go along.
Okay, we're going to talk about Time Crimes. It is directed by a man named Nacho Vigalondo. It's a Spanish film, and it's awesome.
It is, super awesome. 2007, wicked cool. I'd say that in Spanish, like the language it's filmed in, but I don't speak Spanish, so I'm sorry. I will not insult the Spanish people.
This is one of those super complicated to explain time travel movies.
Yeah.
So I think, again, I'm just going to reiterate, you are so benefited by just watching this movie and not knowing anything.
Yeah.
If you're sitting down and listening to this review and thinking, they've said it's awesome, I will watch this time travel
pause
movie.
right now. Like,
Just
if you
stop.
like time travel or just good films in general, just like watch it and then mark where the time is on here and then come back.
Here's what I love about the movie. Like, as far as I can see, the loops in time close fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
Everything makes sense. It's 85 minutes long, something like this. It's super short.
It had my attention, though, the whole time.
And you are riveted. It's 92, pardon me. It's 92 minutes long, but you're riveted for the whole time.
Oh, man, like, the first thing that I wrote down, because I was watching this, and this movie I have the fewest notes on, because, not because there wasn't anything to say, there's so many things to say about it, but I was watching, and, like, my very first note had me interested with the opening credits and typography. Yeah. I'm a designer, I kind of get off on that stuff, but it was just right at the beginning. You get a tone, and you're just like, okay, this is going to be something fun.
This is basically going to be a list of things that I love about the movie that I'm going to say. It's a pretty gushy review.
Go for it.
The main character is a middle-aged dude. Mm-hmm. He looks like a middle-aged dude.
He looks like a real person. He's not some Hollywood.
A little bit overweight. He's losing some of his hair. He's just a guy enjoying his backyard who has a nice marriage, having a pleasant afternoon, checking out his environment through the binoculars, loving life. And he sees something that disquiets him in the bushes. He gets a glimpse of what looks like a guy wearing a pink bandage and a naked woman.
Yeah, which is so European too.
Yes,
indeed. Yeah.
But again, all of these are hooks. You're immediately curious about both of those things. His wife is running an errand, so he goes to investigate. And it's a little, that's where the dominoes start to fall.
It's almost like a little bit of choreography in the beginning, and because right when the tone was set with just those opening scenes and stuff, I'm hooked. I'm watching, but you see him doing different things in his house, and I'm like, okay, well, this might actually play into things,
And of course it will.
Yeah, it's like a waltz or something where he's here, he's there, and then stuff happens, and you're like, this might happen. Come back later.
The first pass through, he gets a phone call, and no one's on the other end of the line. And we follow his character until he gets to a place where he calls his own phone number and hears himself pick up the other line.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what to say. He's so in shock. And that justifies that phone call. I think, again, somebody could tell me that there's, holes in the logic of this, and maybe there are. I just didn't see any immediately upon watching. This was probably my third pass. But I think that the real important thing with this movie is, where do we choose to start? Because in a lot of ways, the start point of this movie could have been anywhere in the movie. It could have been him getting out of the machine. It could have been him being chased by the dude with the bandages. It could have been... There's all sorts of places they could have just started you in the middle of the action. Because it turns out not only do we not know exactly where all these timelines line up, but we're not sure which timeline we started with.
Yeah, well, and because all of them, was it Hector?
Yes,
yeah,
Hector's
so there's
our main
Hector
character.
1, there's Hector 2, there's Hector 3, referenced that way in the film, and they all overlap, and they interact with each other, and there was a few points where I was like, okay, I think I know where this is going. You know, not because it was, you know, such an easy, flimsy plot. That's the total opposite of it. But they say in magic, whenever you see people who are all dressed the same and they're wearing masks or something, there's going to be a bait and switch. And one of the people's going to say, hey, it's me. You know, so that something like that happens in this movie. And I was like, okay, I think this is going to happen. But the way that it ended up happening, still, like, it was like, I don't care, like, this is awesome, this is cool. And the way that the time loops happen, just as a function of the storytelling, the one of them seems a little repetitive because it's him. We're seeing then from the Hector 2 side of watching what he saw from the Hector 1 side, and so that's a little repetitive, but it's still engaging because it's from a different perspective, right? And it's explaining as it's going. But then the other time loops after that were pretty much all new with a little bit of repetition in it, but just enough to keep me going through the entire thing and just eating it up like candy. It was really good.
There's a strange morality to the movie too. From two of the main characters. Obviously Hector's our main character. He ends up being accidentally responsible for a completely innocent woman's death, and because of a mistake of perspective, believes that it's going to end up being his wife's death, right? Yeah. So the perspective work is weird, but in a way to solve this, that woman still ends up dead, right? Yeah. That is a price of doing business. And on the other hand of it, we have the scientist who... friend or foe, that's the hardest character to read, especially on first pass through the movie. When he first encounters a scientist, you know there's something up with the scientist. Like, oh yeah,
like you're just like, hey, who is this guy? What's going on? But the guy, he's
foe,
responsible for the entire thing. He's enabling this entire story. Without him, there would be no story.
He was doing experiments with the time machine, and he wasn't supposed to be. So not only is he trying to cover up the mess that's being created by the time split, but he's trying to save his own ass,
save his job. He's like, "Don't get me fired, man," or whatever.
Who knows? Maybe there was somebody he could call that could make all this shit go away, right? But he's not making that phone call, so that's making this more and more problematic. I don't know how the title translates, but I think Time Crimes is really punchy and smart because in order to solve his problem, and arguably he does, if I understand the movie right, we can debate this, he's a murderer.
He is, but he... See, that's the thing, and it gets back to your point about where does this movie start? What's the entry point, right? Because had none of this happened, he's a very likable, nice guy. He's just having a great day. But someone else did this to him, but that someone else wasn't him yet when these things happen. So the main guy that we're introduced to only ends up becoming who he is because he was sent through these loops. So really, he's almost like a passive murderer victim of the time travel junkie who's turning on the machine and screwing up people. You know, and that the girl with the Schrodinger cat T-shirt, which I thought was pretty cool. She on the bike, she's like, you gotta feel sorry for this poor woman.
Wrong time.
Yeah, wrong time, man. So many wrong times for her. Like, she just could not get a break.
But it's interesting. Like I said, it's a really, really hard to sell premise in a lot of ways. Like, it sounds ridiculous when we're saying it out loud, but we believe it. We believe Hector. We feel his desperation, and we understand what he's trying to do to solve the problem.
Yeah.
You know, even the stuff we predicted, like right away when he saw the dude with the bandages, I'm going to say, well, that's him, right? Yeah. The movie's called Time Crimes, but it's how we get there.
There was one moment where I was a little bit, and maybe I should rewatch it again, but he's had a car accident, and it was almost like a switch went off, and he puts on the bandages, and now he's him. I felt like I needed a bit more of a beat to kind of have that transition from Hector 1 into Hector 2. And it was just like, okay, now we got pink bandages and we put it on. The rest of the movie, but that one little point for me was just like, why is this? Maybe if we could see a flash inside of his mind, or he could have some kind of monologue to explain his fears and why he was switching over, and that he felt he needed to propel this timeline to loop in the way that it did. That was my only criticism of the whole thing. The rest of it was just brilliant, though.
Well, to me, he's working against the clock. And as far as the discovery, he has the car accident, and he starts wrapping his head. Mm-hmm. And after about probably the third loop, he knows.
The third time loop when he's Hector 3,
the third loop of the bandage
around
around his head.
Yeah, he's like,
he
it's
wraps
me.
the bandage. It was me. So where am I supposed to be?
Yeah.
And instead of questioning it, he just goes because he's got to be somewhere. He's supposed to, you know.
So, okay, so what would have happened, though, just to kind of riff on this idea, if he had not done any of this, like if he just said, oh, I'm putting on the bandages and I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
What would have happened?
I don't know. The world would have eaten itself.
Yeah, like it just and that's why I like a movie like this, because it makes you think. And the detail geek in me just totally gets off on thinking about the what ifs, you know. And the story film lover in me, it's just like, oh man, that was just well done.
And do all the Hectors go away?
I think. I gotta rewatch it. I think they all did because all the loops were closed. But my question then is, at the very end of the movie, do they go back to the science dude and be like, dude, what the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
We've got a dead woman on our lawn now.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to help us explain this.
Yeah, my face is beaten up. I've had a very bad day, all because you, and I'm gonna tell your boss.
Yeah.
You know?
But I also love the bookending nature of it, because we start with this dude sitting in his backyard having an awesome day.
Yeah.
Well, you know, a nice relaxing afternoon. He doesn't know it to be the greatest day of his life, but he's not working, right? He's lounging in his chair in his backyard. He's where he wants to be. And at the end of the movie, he takes his wife out of the house and they just sit in the backyard at night. And she's looking at him like, what the fuck is going on? And he could not begin to explain.
Yeah, and he just like sets out of the chairs or that table that they were building, and they're just like,
take my word for it, we're just gonna sit here and it's gonna be okay.
And he's traumatized and victimized himself. You know, he did things he didn't even know he was capable of a few short hours ago, or however many hours it is from his perspective. But I also like that it was. I'm a huge fan of realistic dialogue and really like when real things don't feel so forced. That whole thing with them building a table and will it go through the door, and if it doesn't go through the door, then she'll go get the groceries. And I was just like, you know, that's just neat. I mean, they could have just said, oh, I'm gonna go get groceries, but they give you these real bits of human interaction and human moments that I was so sold on the whole thing, and like the acting is great, the storytelling is great. It makes you wonder. I mean, please, I hope people have watched this before they get the spoilers, but it makes you think the whole time, and that for me is the hallmark of a fantastic movie and a team of the people who are behind all of it, as opposed to say some of the other movies we've talked about that aren't that quality. This really shone for me.
The screenplay is pretty airtight, I think. Again, a smarter person than I might be able to poke holes in it, but I never had a problem with it. And I love this thing. This is usually when I know I'm watching great sci-fi. It's anticipating me. Yeah. I'm asking myself a question right around the time the movie's starting to answer it, right?
Well, and that twist, too. Like, so it still kept you on your toes because as a viewer, you've been exposed to a few of these loops. You think you know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But then with the swap of the wife and the girl with the roof and the things, you're like, I didn't see that coming, So it still keeps you on your toes, even though you think, oh, as a viewer, I'm so smart, I know exactly what's going to happen because we're looping the same kind of events from different perspectives. It still gives you new bits of information along the way.
I think so far, though, I would argue Hector is the most victorious of our time travelers so far. Both in the quality of the movie and the fact that he lived through
he doesn't off himself.
Your classmate, Taylor Fisher, was murdered in her bedroom this morning.
I was just attacked. Sure you were, honey. Are you guys accusing me of something?
There's a killer in Grizzly Lake who is affiliated with people at my school. Detention is in the library. It goes from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's right through prom.
It can't be any of us. We're not anguished enough. Our generation has had no major struggles.
What about 9/11?
Afghanistan.
Katrina.
Heath Ledger.
What? Too soon.
This attacker you're describing, Ms. Jones, sounds just like that horror film.
Cinderella.
Scream.
It's not the end of the world. It's just high school.
So now we're going to arrive at the high school set comedy, time travel, sci-fi, horror extravaganza.
So many things.
Detention.
Okay, so Detention for me is kind of like that thing where it's really long and boring and seems like a punishment. I thought the title was very fitting. I hope I'm not giving too much away of what I felt about this movie, but so bad. Yeah, I don't even know what the movie was about. Like, one of the first things that I put down was, here, I'll show you. Whoa, so bad. Even before I saw Dane Cook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was going to be my opener on this. I think that I know I'm in a little bit of trouble where the star power of the movie is Dane Cook. Like, the people who made this movie thought they had a real...
Hunger Games kid was in there. The
yeah,
short
Josh
guy.
Hutcherson is the main character. Clapton. I'm neither here nor there on Dane Cook. I haven't really seen his stand-up. I just know he's got a reputation of being a little bit difficult and stealing jokes and whatever. But I watched a documentary in the making of this movie, which is actually longer than the movie itself.
Oh my God.
Congratulations to me. And to have a little doubt that everybody involved in making this movie, we're pretty sure they were making an amazing fucking movie.
Oh, I think they thought they had like a fantastic blockbuster. I feel like they thought they were so proud of themselves for all their catchy, clever things they did.
Now, I'm kind of comforted that you weren't. I think that you disliked it more than I did, but I was a little bit worried that this was going to be my curmudgeon review, where I was like, this movie's not for me. This movie is for teenagers, and a teenager would explain to this 40-year-old man why this was funny.
See, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Right?
I've got a thing in here saying I am not the demographic for this film. I just did not feel related to any part of it.
I throw in a but here. One of the movies that they're borrowing from more than a little bit, The Breakfast Club, was made in 1986 and is as good today as it was in 1986. I don't think that Detention is going to age well at all. I think it's one of these movies that's so loud, so hip, and so now that it will be forgotten.
Did you think it was hip? Like maybe this is where I felt out of. I think it felt really full of itself and pretty smug, thinking, oh wow, yeah, we had all these cool things and these self-referential things of we are referencing ourselves as we are a movie, and we're doing these graphic overlays when we're like Zombieland, and we're doing all this kind of 90s indie film dialogue. But it was so disjointed, and there's so many ideas in it. It just really needed 30% of the what they thought was cool taken out, so a person could experience what they were trying to tell. And I still don't know what that was.
I think what they were trying to do was just keep throwing shit at you. Just like they're trying to keep you either laughing or shocked or something. They don't want to lose you at any time, and they're just inundating you with stuff.
Yeah.
Some of it made me laugh. I'm not going to lie. Some of it didn't. I'm uncomfortable with this whole idea of 90s nostalgia, which this movie sort of circles around quite heavily. They're always
and that's why I thought it was maybe like, if we're doing 90s nostalgia, maybe the target was intended to be people who were teens in the 90s.
In which case they missed the ball.
Yeah, and I really think they did, because then I was like, well, maybe they're trying to have this be a teen movie, because there's all teens in it. But is it a remake of one of those, there's all those 90s movies where they're at a house party and they all talk about their lives and what's going to happen, and you kind of care.
The 90s needs their own Dazed and Confused, and that movie will happen at some point. But this was not that movie.
No.
Right? And it's interesting because there's a slasher movie component to it. There's a time travel component to it.
That doesn't even happen until 47 minutes into the film. They get into the detention room, and I was like, okay, finally. This is why the movie's called Detention. Okay, maybe I get it now. No, I did not get it.
You can tell it's directed by a person whose background is in music videos because it's obsessed with music and it's obsessed with hypercutting. It's certainly something that serves to the YouTube culture.
Well, I thought that if they would have spent as much time on the rest of the story as I did in the opening, the credit sequence, like the opening titles, they probably would have had a way better movie on their hands. I think they were so focused on being cool that everything else was sacrificed at the sake of it. Like, they had these ideas about Cinderella and a bear and time travel and the detention and this jock who's really a fly or something. Yep. But all these different... I was just like, okay, well, just give me one bit of a thread that continues through that I can actually be like, I see where you're going. I forgot that Hunger Games kid was even in the movie because he disappeared for about half an hour of it, and I didn't care why or know why.
Well, I think... honestly, he's probably the most experienced actor in the movie, and he gives probably one of the most laziest performances of the movie. Clapton's just quietly cool, and everybody likes him. He doesn't really have a lot of beef. He seems to have read the screenplay and knows that it's all going to work out okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe any of the stakes.
Well, I thought all the people were just horribly unlikable.
I felt bad. I'm going to look up her name here because I'm like that. I want to say Shanley Caswell. Is that her name?
The lead
Riley?
actress?
Yeah. She plays Riley, this girl who's desperately in love with Clapton because she's a fucking idiot. And
oh, she's a moron.
But the series of scenes that she is presented with, where she is constantly humiliating herself, trying to be, give a pretentious speech about vegetarianism, or doing a weird dance piece, or getting drunk at a party.
The French fry ketchup on her hand from the bed sheets, like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Like, it was scene after scene of humiliation for this girl. And again, I have to believe while she's making the movie, it's all going to be worth it.
Yeah.
It's all going to be worth it, this shame and depravity. Nope.
You know what? And that's where I didn't think the acting was particularly bad. She seemed like, I think she was just given, in my opinion, a real shitty script, and a disjointed direction of the whole thing. Her performance was okay, I don't think it was an Oscar worthy, but she did all right. I believed that she was who she was saying she was being. I didn't catch her acting or doing any bad things, but all of these people in this whole thing, number one case, she's suicidal, and so she tries to kill herself, but then this kind of scream killer comes in and is going to kill the person who's suicidal, and can't even kill her while she's hanging from a thing, and then they get caught in a swing set, and you're like, there's no redeeming qualities in any of these human beings. Like, if Dane Cook dies, nobody even bats an eye. They've got 2 minutes to save the world. There's no anticipation or
I didn't care if anybody died, and I didn't care when suddenly people turned out to live, right? You didn't think. But again, I think I'm less severe than you. I think it's a C- movie that thinks it's an A+ movie, and my problem with it is more that it thinks it's an A+ movie than that it's a C- movie.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think they're pretty smug with themselves. And honestly, if it hadn't have been for this podcast, I would have stopped it ages ago. And it's
sorry, dude.
no, it's okay. That's what it is. It gives us lots to talk about. But up until recently, I had never hated a movie this badly.
Wow.
Yeah, like it's my worst movie of all time that I'd ever hated. For some reason, I had to watch was this really, really bad Betty Davis movie called Burnt Offerings years ago. And I think it was because we rented it on tape and we had to watch it because we were
paid money for it.
We paid to watch it. We had to suffer through the whole thing. I was like, okay, nothing could ever be this bad. This was because I had to watch actively. I couldn't just have it on in the background. I had to, it was like I was trapped in, what's his name from Clockwork Orange with the thing.
Right.
Like, I couldn't get away from it. And even I was trying to pay attention and trying to get some kind of sustenance of this from the storytelling. Yeah. I felt so abused.
For me, it took the Family Guy approach, I guess, where we're going to just throw as many jokes at you as possible. Maybe 1 in 6 of them is actually a decent joke, but there's another one coming at you. And so it kept my attention. I wasn't bored by it. So I guess we differ in that respect. But for me, I think that, have you seen Scott Pilgrim versus the World?
No.
Okay. I reviewed it on the podcast. I think it's an amazing movie. Okay. This movie reminds me it'd be the kid brother to Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It knows that it has this older brother that's way better at doing what it's trying to do, and that's already succeeded and way better than it could have possibly dreamt of.
Yeah,
but
and that's why I felt
it's coming into this with something to prove and an attitude. Right?
I think that it cobbled together a bunch of everybody. It was like this cannibalistic movie that kind of, took bits of everybody else's invention for the typography from Zombieland and the Breakfast Club vibe and Scream, and it was so referential of everything else that there wasn't anything original in it. And I was kind of like, where is the thing that I'm going to see something where I'm like, that's really cool? And sure, there was the things about the guy as a fly and the thing with the bear and whatever, but I was just, there was nothing that kept my interest enough or was inventive enough for me to go, hey, kudos to you. That was pretty neat.
This is kind of the frightening place we're arriving at culturally, because one of the most celebrated filmmakers of our generation is Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
And he's arguably a remix artist, right?
That's a good point. I love Tarantino.
I love Tarantino most of the time too, but he just takes ideas he likes and reforms them into his own movies. And that's the same thing that this movie is doing, just in a much more MTV obnoxious way.
I'll totally give you that. I think the difference here, though, is that Tarantino will be inspired and he'll rip off shots and things, whatever. But he writes all that dialogue himself. He comes out and he engages people. This was as if someone had done a 2-hour bunch of quick edits of other people's work, and it was so disjointed. I didn't feel that it was cohesive enough of a thing on its own. So I don't really know what it stood for the whole time.
You can borrow all you want. I mean, if you're going to steal from the best, as the saying goes. But you got to put your own little spin on it. And I think that the personal spin might be the thing that was missing. I think that they figured they had a lot of jokes, they had a lot of style, and they have a lot of style. Like, every single, like, cutaway is not used. We don't just cut to the next scene. There'll be some crazy zip pan or some zoom or some, like...
visually. Oh, like the lighting, the sets, the costuming, the everything, the editing, the filming, all it looks like a music video. It's very polished, and people knew what they were doing when they did that, which surprises me then that the storytelling was just garbage in my mind.
And that's where I'm at. I think we're on the same page. I think that you disliked it a lot more than I did. I just thought it, like I said, C-, but...
a G. I would give it a G. Can you give it a G?
So a split vote, I guess, on Detention.
Darren, I can imagine no way in which this thing would be considered anywhere remotely close to safe.
Why not the lottery?
You have a margin account, right? For now, though, if you wanted to, you can just tell her you had a good day in the market.
You don't understand. No. You don't understand the questions that come with that, okay?
Hey. Oh, come here for a second. What's on your hand? You bleeding? A bit.
Did you see that? I swear that was him. What the hell is he doing? Just sitting outside my house at 2 in the morning.
There's no way I would tell anyone about this. No way.
Can you think of any reason that you might?
No, I can't.
Sometimes we do things, no, we don't know how we got to that.
No, I can't.
Can't what?
I can't think of any reason why I would.
There was value in the thing, clearly. That they were certain of.
So this filmmaker Shane Carruth made a big splash in the independent film circles in 2004 with this movie Primer. And he's followed it up a few years later with this movie Upstream Color.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Which apparently have confounded people. People just don't know what to make of it. Some people like it, some people hate it, but it seems to be one of these movies that just hurts your brain.
Oh, wow.
And you know what? After watching Primer, I believe it.
This guy's wicked. Well, he wrote and directed and starred in this movie, right? He's the dark-haired guy.
Yeah, it's a high-concept sci-fi made for no money.
Yep.
This is a micro-budget
$7,000 or something like that.
It's a series of conversations about time travel. If you boil it down to its bare essences, that's what it is. These two guys tell you the story through their conversations. There's
brilliantly written conversations.
Absolutely.
Like just juicy, just fantastic dialogue.
And I can totally make a meal out of a movie like this. But I understand the wrong personality type would step into this and it would put them to sleep. I'm not even going to sit here and tell you that I understood all of this movie, but I am going to sit here and tell you that I liked it.
Yeah.
I'm scared to watch Upstream Color because of the reaction.
Oh no! I really want Upstream Color. I'm totally gonna look that up.
Yeah, but like, it's over my head, and yet I still like it. It was like the first time I tried to read A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking.
Oh my God, yeah, I've never even tried.
I'm an English major and English and theater arts, right? So this is just not my bag, but this is supposed to be something that's readable that a layman can maybe make something out of. And I read the book, but it was fucking gibberish to me, right? I'm not going to say that this movie was gibberish to me because it wasn't. I understood the basic setup and sort of the friendship that sort of develops this technology and how that technology kind of destroys the friendship and the ramifications of a major...
Yeah, like, I think we should preface, like, you do not need a PhD to watch this movie, you know?
You don't, but it might help.
It makes you think. Like, there are some kind of, mental, exercises that your brain is going to be thinking, but for me, I get off on that. Like, that is just... I love this movie for that, because I was thinking then of the paradoxes and how a person could do this and how would we achieve this and what, like, as we learned that this machine was a time travel device. Even the little,
an accidental time
yeah,
travel
like
device,
which
makes it so cool.
And it was so smart, just because like the way that they find out is because this mold is growing at a rate that's exponentially never been seen before. So they know that time is accelerated in this small space, and then they're having this amazing dialogue too about that's revealing about their characters and their desires and their wants and their motivations. Like this movie for me was I've always been a fan of it. I first watched it probably like 10 years ago. I think this is 2004, so I think it's same year as Butterfly Effect. So apparently time travel was
vogue.
Vogue. It was cool. But I loved this movie back then, and I've probably seen it, I don't know, like a good 3 or 4 times since. It's one of those ones that I kind of come back to, and I just loved the hell out of this thing.
It's a clinic in low-budget filmmaking too, and that like it's well made, it's well shot, but they don't have a ton of money. Clearly, they don't have a ton
they're
of
filming
money.
at gas stations. They're filming at parks. They're filming in storage lockers. There's no big CGI happening here whatsoever.
So in that case, largely what you got is your screenplay.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, I think some of it was over my head, but enough of it wasn't that I was with it. I didn't understand the techno jargon. But in the same way in a lot of episodes of Star Trek, when they say they need to fix the blah, blah, blah in order to save the blah, 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 it doesn't really matter.
You just insert techno
I
babble.
trust that they know what they're talking about, and I understand the conflict that's building between them. Because that's almost as interesting in another way about the movie. Like, the time travel would be enough, but again, where do you start with time travel, right? One day, this guy gets off work, and his best friend of many years has to have this conversation with him. And you can tell right away that this is a serious conversation they're going to have. It would be like you had an atheist friend, and you just met God, and you were going to go tell your friend that God exists, and I'm going to introduce you to him.
I'm not crazy, but just listen to me, and you're going to be freaked out, but just hang on.
Let
bear
these
with
dominoes
me.
fall. Trust me, because we've been friends for this long to let these dominoes fall. And he does. And the friendship still gets broken.
See, and that's the reason. One of the reasons that I love this film so much is that it for me is everything that a good indie film is that they have to rely on story. And so many of the big budget blockbuster Hollywood things, they fall apart. They had a good idea, but it wasn't fully materialized. They got some money behind it, and they threw it all into CGI. And okay, visually it was pretty neat, but at the end of the day, who cares? I don't even remember what it was anymore a day or two later. Right. This movie just plants a seed in you and just makes you think, and those little tendrils of thought go through your brain because it is 100% story driven. You can't rely on CGI. You can just rely on good acting and good storytelling, and you learn about the character motivations. You find out, you start questioning, what would a person do if you could just like punch your boss in the face and have no repercussions? What if you could go back in time and how does that work? Go back in time and have like the winning stocks, that we're going to make it big that day. Would you do it? You know, what if there were no repercussions? There's so many questions, thought-provoking human questions that people think about but don't admit to.
This amount of power that they have stumbled upon, and how can it not corrupt them? Yeah. And as they say in one of their final conversations, look, at the end of the day, either of us can do whatever we want. I can't stop you.
Well, and it destroys their friendship. Yeah. Like they were so tight, so close, and just to see it almost becomes a drug. Yeah. Like this time travel, it becomes this thrill, and they're putting themselves through this kind of torture when they go into this box, and it's physically painful, but the thrill and the exhilaration that they get from it, they almost feel godlike, right? Because they've just been,
right?
Yeah, they've been they're not peons, they're kind of middle executive management types that are, working in a tower doing big business, but you can tell that they're not really loving their lives, and now they get this power, right? Where they can manipulate the people around them to, it's like watching, if you were able to watch a security tape over and over and over again, you'd know exactly when the car pulls up, when the person does this, when someone drops this and talks to the other person.
The Groundhog Day effect. Yeah. You've lived the day so many times.
And he does this, and he starts manipulating things where he can have someone come in with a shotgun and try to hurt people, and he can, win massive fortunes, and it destroys him. It just strips him of all of his humanity, because he feels like he's above it all.
And if it goes wrong today, it can be fixed.
Yeah, no worries. As long as the machine's running, you can get back in.
And that's the great thing about it being a couple of guys in the garage, and the great, just by fate, the fact that it was a low budget movie, right? Like, these guys made this with wires and boxes in their garage.
Yeah.
And they unlocked a very significant key to fucking universe, and of course it destroys them. Of course it does.
See, and
usually it's some like scientific research that's going on from the government or some military base that's cracked the code on some Stargate, right?
Yeah.
These are a couple of dudes in a garage who have no way of dealing with this.
Yeah.
And again, I almost think that if they opened up a literal Stargate with like lights firing everywhere, it would become distracting.
Well, and I
the
think
lo-fi presentation actually feeds the drama.
Absolutely it does. Like, if this movie were made today with big Hollywood bucks, for some reason they'd all have ripped abs and be naked when they had to get into the machine. They would probably do it to find some, beautiful woman and have some explicit sex scene with her so they could win her. And then they'd probably fight over her, and it would be her that would be the rift, and it would all be sex and violence driven, right?
To be honest, I was waiting for it to come down to a fight over a girl, because doesn't that usually end up what it is, money or a girl, right?
And this takes a higher road, and it says, well, no, we're not. I mean, there's very base instincts at play here.
Yeah.
This guy wants to be he wants to be the puppet master, right? And he wants to manipulate everything and become a kind of supreme being with his device. But it's not just about, sex and boobs and guns. Like, I don't even know if there is a gun in this movie anywhere. It's just so well written, and it's not so highbrow that it's inaccessible.
When I said at the beginning of the movie that this is a series of conversations about time travel, I was not being glib. Like, the movie really is told by a series. It could be a stage play. It could very easily
could totally be a stage play. Yeah,
a pretty interesting one, I think. And again, it stands strongly. Strong ideas, reasonably well acted by an inexperienced cast. The lo-fi presentation helps the lo-fi feel of the story that they're telling. Tinker in your garage, be a hobbyist, because you might be the guy that figures this shit out, but there might be a price to being the guy who figures that shit out.
And the thing that I liked about this movie, again, getting back to the dialogue, is that you get that kind of 90s indie film, long exposition, but it's just rich. It's dripping with intent and with subtext, right? Whereas with a movie like Detention, it tries to do that, but there's no hidden meaning in what they're saying. They're just blathering on. At least in my mind, I didn't care. Whereas this one, it was so full of so many things that were thought provoking.
Primer does not spoon feed you. It does not. Detention spoon feeds you. Primer does not. I think Detention more accurately kind of feeds you with a slingshot.
Yeah. I completely agree.
Primer is a meal, and like I said, it kind of reminds me. Recently, my buddy Lee and I reviewed a movie called Waking Life, which I really, really love as well.
Is that the Keanu Reeves?
Richard Linklater. It's animated. It's
they overlaid all the cells with animation. Yeah,
philosophical conversations and stuff like that. And it's like, I love that movie, but I understand that not everybody will love this movie. And that's sort of how I feel about Primer. I love it, but I don't think it's a movie for everyone.
I would agree with that, yeah.
So if it sounds like it's something that'd be interesting to you, then by all means. But otherwise, I'd say buyer beware. It's not that it's too smart. It's just... compared with movies like Detention and like Time Bandits and like Looper, this is a different environment entirely.
I think that for Primer, you get out of it exactly what you put into it. Yeah. So if you are putting it on while you're cooking and the kids are yelling, or you're on your phone checking your Facebook, you're not going to get anything out of it, because there's no explosions to go, oh wow, that was kind of neat. This is dialogue, story driven, no budget, and so you have to actively watch the movie. Just keep the one screen on. Don't multitask with your laptop and your phone and other things all at the same time. This is a full engagement, and I think most people, if they give it that, they will reap the rewards from it.
It is worth your time.
Absolutely.
Remember my voice? I do trailers. All kinds of trailers.
73, take 2.
One day they'll put me in a film, a proper full-length job. Until then, I'm just stuck with this sort of stuff. Go and see this. Don't miss that. The most terrifying thing you ever saw is coming to babysit for you tonight.
All right, cut it there. Look, just read what's on the script, will you?
What?
The script. Other way up.
Ah. Ready?
Yes, yes.
You flock to see brief encounters for the special...
Close.
Close Encounters.
Close Encounters, the film.
Oh, I never saw it.
Well, forget that film. We're on about our film. Time Bandits.
The what?
Time Bandits, the one you are supposed to be promoting. Remember?
You flocked to see Close Encounters for the special effects. You went to Superman to see a man fly. You went to Star Wars for the droids. You went...
Now what?
What's page 2, man?
It's under page 1. See? Oh, dear.
You went to Star Wars for the droids. Time Bandits can offer you much, much more. It's not the special effects, or flying men, or droids, which makes Time Bandits a unique cinematic...
Cinematic! You know, pertaining to the cinema.
Cinematic experience, it's the makeup. Yes, folks, you've never seen anything like it. Men made up to look like monsters. Monsters made up to look like men. Look-alike men made up to look different. Different men made up to look alike. No expense has been spared on the pan stick. No expense has been spared flying in the world's greatest makeup man.
Just a minute. What about the plot?
The what?
The plot. What the film is about.
Well, I haven't seen it, have I?
Haven't seen it? You're sitting there telling millions of people to go and see a film you haven't even seen?
Well, I can't see every film I do now, can I?
Oh, wonderful. Terrific. Look, give me that.
What are you doing?
Taking over. You're out. O-U-T. Finished. Kaput. Finito.
What about the trailer?
I'll do it. Time Bandits is an awfully good film. We have worked ever so hard on it. It's a tremendous adventure story. We like it, and we're pretty sure you will. What's wrong with it? It's direct, punchy, honest.
Honest. What's that got to do with it?
So I've gone on record in the past on the podcast as Terry Gilliam's one of my favorite filmmakers. I reviewed his Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I reviewed his 12 Monkeys. They both ranked very high on the list. We're going to talk about Time Bandits.
Yep.
It's going to rank fairly high on the list. So I just, full disclosure, I'm a fan of Terry Gilliam. That said, I'm not saying he's never even made a bad movie. I'm just saying...
Yeah, you like what you like.
I bring the love with this movie. There's so much that I love about this movie because I'm an 80s guy. I've been spending a lot of time in the 80s with the podcast lately. Such a specifically odd, absolutely mental decade. Terry Gilliam's trying to get this movie called Brazil made, and he's having a hard time getting anyone to bite because it's absolutely brutal, challenging sci-fi. So he's got to prove himself a little bit beforehand. So he comes up with this family-friendly, I say in the air quotes,
yeah, huge
kids
air
movie
quotes,
called Time Bandits. This was sold and is considered a children's movie. And
so weird. It would never get made this way today as a kid's film.
It would never get made, period.
Yeah.
If not for Terry Gilliam, and probably not today. But like, it's what you just said is part of the reason that I love Time Bandits, because it is absolutely off its rocker. Like,
when did you first see it? How old were you?
I would probably be the age the kid was, 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah, so what, you're 40?
I'm 40.
Yeah, I'm 40 as well.
Yeah.
So, or no, oh god, I'm 41.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw it when I was a kid as well. So it's got a bit of nostalgia for me, big time.
And the thing is like I remember being enthralled by it, but I don't particularly remember being scared by it. I was a little bit upset when it looks like one of the little guys gets squished later in the movie, but generally, I think you tend to roll with the punches when you're a kid in a way that you don't as an adult, unless you're Terry Gilliam. I think that this weird dream logic of the film and this sort of chaos of the structure is all Terry Gilliam, and Larry is 100% on board. Our main character, this charming British boy, doesn't get a lot of attention from his parents.
No, yeah,
and he's
none.
having strange sounds and encounters happening in his room at night. Some little men sneaking around, and suddenly a knight breaking through the wall, and he gets caught up with these little time bandits who have stolen a map, which is basically a time machine from God, and are now jumping from time to time, stealing treasure, while God himself pursues them.
Well, God or the evil genius, like the evil bad devil.
There is
right?
the evil bad devilly guy who's trying to get his hand on the watch, but the big glowing orb face that's chasing
guy,
him,
right.
that is God. God has had his creation stolen by these guys. And there's something so deliciously mad about these guys. These little, they're all dwarves or midgets or whatever the polite term.
I looked up, I wasn't sure what to call them because I thought I was going to be a jerk. They say that like little people's okay, dwarves
See, little
okay.
people seem somehow condescending.
Because there's like a little people society or something. But anyway, I heard my very brief Google search said
we'll call them sausage fingers. No. No. Terry Gilliam works a lot with little people, and this is no exception.
And a lot of them were in Star Wars, apparently. Yeah, there's Kenny Baker, and there's a few of the other. They're all Ewoks.
If you're a Willow fan, you'll recognize them from Willow as well. But he said in the documentary on the disc, it's that he liked the idea of them being on the same level as this kid, because I think for me that's really what it comes to be about. This is another one of the many great quote children movies that are more for adults than kids that are about the loss of innocence, right? The importance of imagination and how you struggle to hold on to it as a child, but how it inevitably must slip, right? These guys listen to him. When he has a plan, they take him seriously. When he meets Sean Connery, this great valiant knight who slays the Minotaur, he listens to him. He respects the kid, and he wants to adopt the kid. Everybody that he encounters in his series of adventures, Napoleon, played hilariously by Ian Holm, they all seem to value his input.
Well, and those are some of the best children's films generally, is when the children are the protagonists and either amongst themselves or through by us as the viewers, they are taken seriously, you know? So generally either adults are stupid and don't understand and the kids are the only ones who know what's going on, or like in a thing like Goonies, they all have these bonding moments and they do these very they go through tough situations together, but none of them are bawling or being babies or what an adult thinks of a child. They are their own heroes, and I think that it really succeeds on that level of being a classic children's vibe in that respect, you know?
But, and just the little boy mentality, it would be cool to be a thief. It would be cool to be Robin Hood. No, it would be cooler to be a knight. No, it would be better to do the right thing. Maybe we should fight a dark overlord, right? A lot of Alice in Wonderland stuff here, right?
Well, and I think like just as far as this kid's the character, his life is going, like his parents are not listening to him at all. No. He's got nothing but escape to you know, so he's got to kind of invent, you know, whatever this would be, and like and there's so much kind of subtext I thought on consumerism and you know what are the real values and the real things that we want to you know what do we want to value? The parents were valuing like products and cooking equipment and stuff, which kind of bites him in the ass at the end of the film.
They don't even look at their son in the opening scenes. They send him to bed and talk to him several times without acknowledging his existence, really. It's interesting. I love Terry Gilliam because I think the man himself is a little bit crazy.
You think?
But he brings that craziness to the movies in a sort of focused way. Because the story is mad. It's got dream logic. It's got nightmare imagery that you
Dream logic is very accurate,
It's got nightmare imagery that you wouldn't think a kid can handle, but in a way, the kids handle probably better than the adults do now. It's probably a more frightening film to me at 40 than it was when I was 8.
Oh, see, when I was young, I remember just being scared of this movie because I remember liking most of it, and I honestly hadn't seen it probably in a good 20 years, you know? So I think I've only seen it 3 times now. But I just remember the ending where his parents die, right? And I'm like, whoa, and it just left me with such a horrible like as an adult I'm kind of like whatever.
It's a mad way to end a kid's movie.
Well, right? I heard that Gilliam couldn't get approval on that cut, or no, even to shoot it until someone said that a kid said that they thought it was cool, or they shot it and then a screening and a kid said it was awesome, and they were able to keep it. He fought for that.
I heard an interview say, too, that he doesn't believe in test screenings, but they're forced on him, but in a way that helped his ending. Because a lot of people who hated Time Bandits said, probably in a way to be shitty, that their favorite part of the movie was the end.
Oh, no.
Right?
That was my least favorite part of the movie.
Well, here's my thing. Like, if this is a journey about this boy finding his power in his imagination, he's running the engine himself. His parents weren't providing that. He's been given the power to do it himself. So his parents touch the evil rock and explode.
Yeah.
But I think we're supposed to be left with, he's fine. He doesn't need his parents. Look at what he's overcome to get here, right?
See, and I
but
remember...
as a kid, it's like trauma. Parents
Total trauma.
But you also have to remember, this is written by Terry Gilliam and Michael Palin, two of the members of Monty Python's Flying Circus, and they deal in absurdity. And like the fact that the movie pans out and like it goes this huge crane shot and then it starts lifting up from the sky, and you have this realization that the credits are about to roll, and that's seriously how they're going to end
and
this
that
movie.
is what traumatized the crap out of me when I was a kid, because so right up until, like, I mean, we can get back to the earlier parts of the movie, but that ending, they've just all had this thing, and we think some of them are dead, and no, it's not going to be that way. We think everything's okay. The little people just kind of say, later, kid, and they just disappear. Really, there's no kind of Wizard of Oz, I'll always love you, you're my friend forever, it's been a great adventure. They're just gone. He wakes up, his house is on fire. Then his parent, Sean Connery, comes out of nowhere again. You're like, how is he a fireman? Is he real? What's happening? Then his parents are dead. The end. What? These were friends that you went on an adventure with. They didn't even give a crap to say goodbye to you. Your parents are dead. Little Colin, when he was watching this, I thought, traumatized. It's like, oh my God, he has no house. All of his possessions are gone. And no parents. The friend that was is now a fireman just kind of tips his hat and goes off. So he is not a person in the world now to look after him. There's God isn't even around anymore. It's totally godless.
He's back to the quote real world. But all of the stuff that exists in his dream, not in the way they exist in his dream, but they do exist in the real world. They have reflections in the real world. There's evil in his dream. There's evil in the real world.
Yeah.
There's heroes in his dream. There's heroes in the real world. I think this is Alice in Wonderland. I think this is all a marvelous dream that he had that taught him a lesson. But it's weird that it doesn't just end with him waking up, but it ends with him waking up and being instantly orphaned. Which is basically, when you
kids
think
movie.
about it, Terry Gilliam ends where most Disney movies start. Right? How many Disney movies start with a little kid being orphaned? Right?
Yeah, and then they find their little happy troop and they all have a new family.
No, that's not how Terry Gilliam does business. I think it goes into the family tree of a lot of these fantasy movies that might be more valuable for adults than for kids, that were maybe just mistakenly, suggested towards kids. I'm talking about movies like Where the Wild Things Are. To a point, even movies like Labyrinth. There's a lot of themes in Labyrinth that I think go right over my kids' heads when they watch it.
But I mean, even like the Pixar movies and stuff now, that they'll throw in stuff for the adults. They'll cater to the children, but they try to make it accessible to everyone. I'm not saying that this movie did that, but there was definitely an adult slant to the things that were happening. Like the trauma and all these things, and the like. There's those skull riders and all this stuff, and it's quite frightening. The game show where you're going to be like killing people you love for money. Like, if that's not a whole comment on consumerism, like, I mean, I don't know what is.
That's Jim Broadbent, actually.
A very young Jim Broadbent,
Jim Broadbent being the game show host.
There's so many people.
As an absolutely hysterical Napoleon. John Cleese as a seemingly polite but kind of a dick Robin Hood.
And he had top billing. Like you press play on that movie, and it's like
John Cleese
He's top billing
for 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's it. Catherine Hellman, Sean Connery, Ian Holm, Jim Broadbent. Like, actually, I don't even know if he got billing.
No, Jim Broadbent, I don't think was even a name
then.
at all.
But all these people, and you're like, I didn't even remember that there were that many people in this flick, right? But yeah, just like a good romp, and really not too much to do about time travel. Like, they could have. I thought, as far as like if time travel were the thing that this movie was essentially about, which it absolutely isn't, they could have used the map to go back in time and save the day and had their friends not die, or gone back to help out each other. Instead, they bring a bunch of cowboys and gladiators, and so it's more the adventure slant, and the time travel is just kind of a MacGuffin. It's just a plot device.
But it's a little kid marshalling them too. First he sends a wave of cowboys at him, then he sends a wave of arrows, then a wave of tanks, and he's calling the shots. The little kid gets to be in charge. David Warner plays the character of Evil.
Oh, he was pretty good.
He was delicious. I love his little sidekicks, one of which he turns into a dog, and just enjoying his role. My buddy Jeremy loves that guy. He's the king of exposition. I guarantee you've seen him in movies that you've forgotten.
The Omen, I think, is the
he's
biggest
in the
one,
Omen, yeah. But usually he's the guy who shows up, gives exposition, and is killed. That's his job.
My favorite scene of his in Time Bandits, and I can't even remember the exact lines, but it's something to the effect of, well, what about this? And one of his little minions says, has his little line, he kills him. He's like, yeah, actually, you have a good point.
Actually, that was a very good point.
After he kills him.
But the great thing is this is one of the many ways that Terry Gilliam completely breaks the rules, but is successful. How, in the end, are Time Bandits and this little boy successful against evil?
How are they successful against evil?
It's 100% Deus Ex Machina. God shows up and saves the day.
Yeah.
It's exactly the thing that you don't do, right? Something active has to be done by our heroic character. This kid sends wave after wave after wave trying to stop evil, and he can't do it.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's where I think I was a little bit to rip it apart. Don't get me wrong, I quite like this movie.
Yeah.
But as far as if we're talking time travel, you got a time travel map, man. Yeah. Come on, you can go back. You kid, if you were organizing the Cowboys and the Gladiators, just send one of yourselves back in and help your buddy from getting straight, or don't get kidnapped in the first place by the bad guy, or do something, but that's my adult brain talking as well.
That's not this movie. This movie is keeping you mad. We're going to have a few minutes on the Titanic, and we're going to have a few minutes, in a totally different time period. Then we're going to have a few minutes on a boat with an ogre, and then that boat's going to turn into a hat.
And we're going to see Shelley Duvall and Michael Palin be the same. Yeah, in different time frames, looking the same, being the same, but they're not. So obviously logic kind of takes a back seat, and you just kind of experience and you suspend your disbelief and you go with it.
There's madness and humor and absurdity, and that's all Monty Python.
Yeah.
And then you've got this crazy perspective given to you from Gilliam. And in the end, we've got this, I think, incredible feast called Time Bandits. But would I show it to my kids? No, not right now.
How old would you say they'd have
My
to
boys
be?
are 12 and 9 right now, and I don't think they would get it. I really don't. I think this is a fantasy movie for...
Which is funny, because we would have seen it when we were much younger than
I know, but a lot of stuff. I showed my son Jurassic Park, and Owen made me promise that I never show him anything that scary again. Wow. And he's 12, right? And when I was 12, I was watching some fucked up shit.
See, and I would take the tact, if I had kids, which I don't, but I would be, okay, you're gonna watch this, and it's gonna desensitize the crap out of you.
I was watching Evil Dead 2 and The Hitcher at 12. I was watching hard
Jaws.
shit.
I think I watched Exorcist when I was 13 or something.
Jaws
like that.
was well established as one of my favorite movies by this point. My kids are different than me. Somehow that happened. But I think that the only problem with the movie that I have is that it's advertised as a kid's movie. And I think it's just a straight fantasy movie. And taken as a straight fantasy movie, it's wonderful. Taken as a kid's movie, it's too scary by half.
Yeah, well, I agree, because, it even got me when I was a kid. But, did it traumatize me? Did it ruin my life? No. Do I want a time machine to go back and unwatch that movie? No. It was a good movie. And
I'm glad it exists. I'm glad Terry Gilliam exists. And this Handmade Films, this was his own production company. They made this movie pretty cheaply, considering how ambitious it was. This was his
They were going to do a
compromise.
sequel, too, I'd heard.
Well, it was a huge hit for him.
Yeah.
But it was the thing that finally got Brazil made.
Nice.
So he got to make the movie he wanted. In a way, this is the movie he had to make in order to prove he was the guy to make Brazil.
Isn't that nuts?
So,
wow.
Big fan.
Yeah, I quite liked it as well, and I think it holds up, and it gives you that nostalgia factor to watch again for sure.
Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate this.
Oh, anytime, man. It's super fun.
Well. If you want to pick another list, I welcome you to do it. Thank you so much. We've just talked about 6 time travel movies.
Mm-hmm.
What was your least favorite and why?
Well, I don't want this to come as a surprise to anybody, but my least favorite, like if I could rank this lower than 6, I would, but it was Detention.
Right.
I just
trying too hard.
Did not resonate with me at all. And you know what? There might be other people who are the demographic who it's their favorite movie and whatever, and I appreciate that. It just was not a Colin movie, so that was my number 6. My number 5. My number 5 would be Butterfly Effect. It's okay. It's kind of vanilla, you know, nothing too crazy. My number 4 would be Time Bandits, only because it kind of freaked me out a little bit when I was a kid, and if we'd reviewed this, like if it was a different time, if I'd only seen it for the first time when I was that kid, I might have a different review. But it's still a fantastic movie, but ranked among the others, I liked the other ones better for different reasons. My next one then would be Looper. It's fun. It's not necessarily better than Time Bandits all around, but it was more new for me and a little bit more intriguing with the telekinesis in it. I didn't have the emotional scarring of the childhood thing. Then my number 2 would be Time Crimes. I love that movie. That was so good. Just a really fun time. And then number 1 was Primer.
Okay. Well, I'll go through mine, but I think we might have just gone 0 for 6.
What?
So you might be getting a prize, my friend.
What? I didn't think we were going to line up 6 for 6. That's
but
for
prove
sure.
me wrong here. I'll go through.
Okay,
them.
yeah.
In 6th place, I put The Butterfly Effect.
Okay.
I'm not angry at this movie. I don't hate it for existing, but I don't understand why there's sequels to it.
There's sequels?
Yeah, there's 2 sequels to them.
Oh my God.
For some reason. I cared so little about this movie. I've reviewed sequels to movies like Starship Troopers and Tremors and stuff like that. I am not going to get around to the sequels of The Butterfly Effect.
I agree.
I'm not going to do it. I got to get through the Children of the Corn movies first.
Detention was so much worse, though. So much worse.
Well, I put it in 5th place.
Okay.
Is where I put Detention. And it's trying, and I don't think that the people making it are untalented. It's just there's something desperate about the movie to me.
I completely agree.
Yeah, the fact that it's just so desperate to please is weirdly off-putting.
Yeah.
But I guess I agree with you. Say if you're somebody who thinks Dane Cook is a superstar, and if you think that glib, clever references to '90s things like My So-Called Life, are hilarious, then maybe this is just the movie for you.
Yeah.
It is definitely one of those movies where everything was on the table. Like I said, it's a slasher movie, a time travel movie, a John Hughes comedy. It's all put in a blender.
Yeah.
I think it kind of made a slurry, but someone else might not. It's impressively mounted, but desperate.
This is true.
In 4th place, I put Looper, which might seem surprising, although it's on the bottom half of the list. I still recommend the movie.
Yep, still a good time.
It's kind of a nihilistic kick. When at the end of this, I think you could almost sell this as a horror movie. I mean, clearly it's sci-fi, but at its heart, it's a very dark story about very dark people.
I think that's shades of Sixth Sense still influencing you, Bruce Willis. I get the horror vibe, but just not as much, in my opinion.
And as much as I talk shit about Bruce Willis, he does not suck in the movie.
No,
he's
not at all.
He's fine. In a way, it was tailor-made for a Bruce Willis role. He kills a lot of guys quite coldly.
Mm-hmm.
So, all the way in 3rd place, and I apologize, I put Primer.
Oh my God, friends off.
You
No.
son of a bitch.
Oh, dude.
How could I do that?
Oh,
I like Primer a lot. I love what it achieves on no budget. I think it's super, super smart.
When did you first see it?
When I got it cheap on video, I'm going to say probably 3 or 4 years ago. It had been around for a while.
Fair enough, yeah, because I think I saw it when it first came out. So my love for it happened then, which I think is what happened with you in Time Bandits.
Yeah.
I fell in love with it at the time.
I'm a genre guy. There's certain science fiction movies that I'll chomp at the bit. I'm definitely going to see that, blah, 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 blah. And there's certain horror movies that I, seek out and want to watch. But truth is, Colin, eventually I'm probably going to get to it. Primer's in third place, but I encourage everybody to check it out.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the art house choice out of this bunch, and it's all talk and no flash, but I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely.
In second place, I put Terry Gilliam's Time Bandits.
Oh, I thought you would have made that number one.
Part of me almost wants to make it number one because of my love for Gilliam, but I know it's me, and I do know that the movie is crazy, and I know that some people find Gilliam's flavor of crazy off-putting.
He's an acquired taste, you know?
I'm also putting into account the sort of time travel idea of this. And to me, as much as it is Time Bandits, this is an Alice in Wonderland dreamscape. We go throughout history, but we also go to mythological places. We also go wherever this boy's imagination wants us to go. And for me, the purest and most successful, quote, time travel movie that we talked about would have to be Time Crimes.
Yeah, that is a fantastic movie. It's my number 2.
Yeah.
But it's still so good. And I think I just have to qualify my rankings. I kind of went with the initial wow factor I got. And so for me, Primer did it because it has the luxury of being an older film. So it kind of hooked me.
Right.
In a more novel way 10 years ago. And with Time Crimes, I think I was a little bit more accustomed to not the rhetoric, but the type of storytelling that a time travel movie does. But I was still infatuated with this movie. But I went on the initial buzz I got from Primer 10 years ago versus this, but they were very close for me, Primer and Time Crimes. Time Crimes is a fantastic. I don't dispute you putting that number one.
Tough.
It's a beautiful film.
Number 1 and 2 were probably the toughest for me, to sort out. But it was an interesting list of movie. But am I right? Did we just go 0 for 6 there?
I think we did.
I owe you a prize. I will figure that out off of the mic. But congratulations
for
the anti-win, going 0 for 6.
Hey, who has anybody else got 0 for 6?
Oh, we've had a few winners. It doesn't mean you're a champion. I don't have a title.
No, it means I'm thank you for calling me a champion.
Or an anti-champion?
Uncle Champion. As long as we're champions in there, I'll be happy.
You're the opposite of my friend Paxton Francis right now. Paxton Francis is the current champion of Rank and Review.
Oh, man. Well, I'm glad. 0 for 6. I'll still take it with honor. It was really fun doing
And
this.
the thing is, I don't think we disagree in any major way on these movies. I think you hated Detention more than I did, but that's about it. For the most part, we like these movies.
Oh, right? Yeah. Detention was, it was a fun exercise to watch this movie, but I just think that it took up too much of my life, and I wish I had it back. I wish I had a time machine for that one, but the rest were all really good times. I don't think you could go wrong.
The thing is, the same writer-director, I would watch another movie from.
I'd give him another chance. He knows what he's doing, but I wouldn't watch that particular movie ever again.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm fast-forwarding in time, and I'm foreseeing a future in which Colin has done more than one Rank and Review.
Oh, I think I've seen this future. I think you might be right.
Sweet. And we've run out of time on this 91st episode of Rank and Review on time travel. But if you'd like to have your voice heard, you can send me an email at ranknreview@gmail.com. That's RankNReview@gmail.com. Tell me what you think. Do you think it's as crazy as I do that in the movie Time Bandits, those tiny immortal beings weren't happy just doing things as they were, working for the creator and living forever, that they decided to steal and jump all over time to become thieves? Just send me any feedback that you have on the show. I would welcome it. Give me that positive review on iTunes. Give me that like on Facebook. It's really great for the morale. And I really enjoyed this episode of Rank and Review. I hope you did as well. And I hope you'll be listening to episode 92. Love as always, from your host and random Canadian, Larry Parsons.